Welcome back to our committee series. Today we're looking at our committee number 2. Our committee number 2, like number 1, it's looking at Ashibarai, but this time it's a hook, very much like Naihanch. Again, you need to try and get your weight, their weight, off the front foot. There are different ways to overcome that if you can't quite take their weight. So we'll demonstrate it and then I'll break it down for you. Right. Okay, so again, you most probably see me doing cheating my distance to try and get that before I did the okuriashi. Quite interesting, and maybe you can look at it yourself, is that usually you have this irimi and kazushi. So if we started off, say not like number 1, like number 1, I would be stepping in, that's my irimi, and then with kazushi, going in. So if you think about it, what we're trying to do on this one is to start to break his balance, take his space before we've actually moved in, which is quite radical, really. So if Sensei takes his stance, if I, just for a second, he started to go, he started to break his balance, and that's the time to attack. Not when you've got somebody rock solid, yeah, but that's when you start to move your hips. So when you're sparring, you see a lot of people that do sort of dummy attacks to see what the reaction would be. But also they're looking for the start of the kazushi, where he's possibly going to be off balance. Somebody who's really honed in, some of the Olympic guys, a lot of the internationals, they'll be looking and watching and seeing if they are to try and start that kazushi, and then they'll follow him with irimi. So you've actually sort of theoretically swapped it completely around. So that's one thing to try and work on, especially when you're sparring. Yeah, the other one is, as you'll notice, it's a hook. I'm sure the guys who do Wado watching this will know Naihanchi. Yeah, some of the Shotokan guys, Teki. So whatever your style is, this is very similar. This is, when you're taking. So if we come around slightly. Yeah, it's no good trying to take the leg high up, because the least path of resistance is the knee. The knee will just bend. Yeah. Again, it's hard work if you go halfway. You'll get a combination of the top going and the knee bending. So really, you want to get your hook, your ashibarai hook, low to the ground. And hook, or have the force the same way that the foot is pointing. It's much, much easier to take. And not bash, not kicking. Maybe you can, but we're practicing and don't really want to damage. So try and get your ashibara, your hook, to go close to their foot. Yeah, as low down as possible. That's when you start taking them. So like number one is a sweep when it's going away from you. Number 2 is a hook. Yeah, Naihanchi. Yeah, tuk, touch, gakuzuki. Yeah, so maybe those are the 2 points that I'd say to take away is try and think of this switching the kazushi and the urimi around a little bit. Have a play with that and then think about how you would hook the person. Again, if you're just starting, yeah, again, this is inside. If you find it difficult and your uke is bigger than you, mass-wise, then use the bigger muscle until this one's built up enough. So use this. The only problem there is you have to turn your hip to use this bigger muscle. But instead of you getting frustrated and doing more and more damage to the uke, try that way for a while, and then Naihanchi.
So very similar to Oyo number 1. For this to be effective, Tori really does need to push the intent, push the kime, get the distance right. If he can get a flinch response, a natural flinch response, you've already sort of slightly loaded the back leg and took some of the load off the front leg. And that will make this hooking, sweeping technique much easier. But to do that, that punch has got to come in. You've got to feel a threat and want to come away from it. If he's too far away and you're feeling no threat, it's not going to work at all. So, basically, if you're not feeling a threat, say to Tori, you need to get a little bit closer, or certainly push in deeper into the technique, just to get you this little bit off the front foot onto the back foot. As Sensei mentioned, the actual hooking technique is very similar to Namigeshi from Naihanchi. I remember going on a course with Sensei Shimizu many years ago, and he'd been swept by, I think it was Jeff Thompson. And he went away to rack his brains, how can I prevent being swept again in the future? And the answer he came up with was Namigeshi from Naihanchi. So just to vary your training up a little bit, instead of just being the passive uke and waiting for the hook, as the hook comes, you can do Namigeshi, come back in and counter-attack. So they're trying to use a Naihanchi style technique to attack you. You can also use the same technique to defend yourself. So you can get a little bit of to and fro. So, he will suddenly become, or she will suddenly become uke, and you're the Tori. So you can play around with this and get some good, useful concepts from Naihanchi kata.
Okay, conclusion. It's the second part of learning about Ashibari. It's a little bit thought-provoking about trying to get your kazushi before you actually do a urimi. Have a think about that. It's also when you start to try and cheat distance, to try and gain more distance. Then you're venturing into an example when you're doing Naihanchi. You can always use this as a practical example of the Naihanch move. You know, not only to attack with it, but there's also Senzikeresis, but you can actually defend with it and then go back into your attack. You know? This move can be used for attacking and defense. I committed a lot of information in there, but again, you need to have that consciousness of what the attacker, when you are ready. Also think about this front hand, not just aimlessly going in with a Gakuzuki. Don't forget, there's no attack, there's no defense. You should be thinking about defense and attack. Yeah, you could use this hand. Yeah, so try and make sure that when you do move in, you have got your defense already there. Yeah, don't just take it for granted that he's going to let you do that attack. Also, you need to start adjusting your speed. You know, don't always do it slow. Don't always do it the same speed. I've seen so many, and then they come back, bump, 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 and you get into some sort of rhythm. No, you need to adjust that rhythm. And if you were doing that, then you can see what your movements are having an effect on the ukis, and then start it. So try and start using this to read the body language as well. Yeah. So, shh.